off. Hey, everybody, it's Mark Pattison. I'm back with another great episode of Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. And before I get into today's great guest, I just want to take a quick pause, direct people to the website, www.markpattisonnfl.com. And I've got loads of podcasts there of incredible people doing amazing things. We all need to get inspired. And certainly I'm in that category as well. The NFL has come out with this amazing movie on my journey to Mount Everest and back safely, thank God. And you can find that on YouTube called Searching for the Summit. It's a really amazing documentary on what went down. And it's not all about just climbing a mountain. It's also about tackling challenges in life. And finally, I continue to raise money for my daughter, Amelia, for her epilepsy, Amelia's Everest. And if you want to go there and put in a donation, everything goes exactly or 100% to Higher Ground here, located here in Sun Valley. That would be wonderful. So on that note, let's get into today's great guest. I want to welcome to the show, Kevin Reilly. How you doing?
Mark, it's been a great to be with you. I see the sun out there. You're a couple hours behind us. We're getting a little bit of a cold front here, but hey, it's getting to be wintertime. Everything's going really well. Thank you.
All the way from Delaware to Idaho, here we are having a chat, and we are sort of brothers from a different mother, so to speak. We were just talking about that before we went live, and the net is this: is that you were an NFL player many years ago, just like I was. You were drafted in the 7th round. I was drafted in the 7th round. I think you might be 10 years older than me, but at the end of the day, we still shared that common bond, and that was to grow up, little league, playing football, one day get drafted into the NFL. And in your case, you got drafted by the Miami Dolphins. And I think it was about 1973, and maybe the year before, they were undefeated.
It was 1972. They had the last undefeated season, Mark. Hard to believe that nobody has duplicated that. I think one team, I think it was New England. By the way, I played a half a year with New England, but I want your audience to know I played with them before they started cheating. Okay, so, but I think they went into the Super Bowl that got beat, and that stopped, or maybe a playoff game. But you think back, you thought, hey, another 10 years, somebody will do this. Nobody did it, and then I was unfortunately drafted in the 7th round, like you were, I believe.
Yep.
Back in the day when they had 17 rounds, by the world champion Miami Dolphins, who had gone undefeated the year before. And it was a heck of a training camp. I made it down to the very last cut, and they picked up a guy by the name of Bruce Bannon by Penn State after Joe Paterno made a personal call to Shula. And he could play this hybrid defensive end linebacker spot, which I wasn't big enough to play. And I had the team made up to that point. So it was a little bit of bad luck, but the good luck was I got picked up by the Philadelphia Eagles, which was my hometown field. So, yeah, we got a lot in common in that way.
Yeah, that's incredible, because, this is one of the things that you and I share in common. And when I played, I was drafted, I was on the team, I was cut the next year, I was brought back, I was traded, just all these things happen. And unlike college, you played at Villanova, I played at the University of Washington, where there's consistency. Obviously, you're not being cut. You are there for 4 or 5 years. In my case, I redshirted. And, you can build a lot of continuity with players, with teammates. And with the NFL, it's all business, as you know. And one day you're in, the next day you're out. And you just never know when that coin's going to flip.
No, you're exactly right. And as I tell people, playing high school football here in the state of Delaware, we played for a team that was annually in the national spotlight called Salesianum School. It was an all-boys Catholic school. And my senior year, we went undefeated, and we sent 11 guys to Division I schools on scholarship for football. Now we end up about 5 of us making it all the way through 4 years. But, people go back that I live around here with, and they said, well, you were totally dominant as a high school football player. And I said, yeah, I was. And when I got to college, I was dominant. And then when I got to the Miami Dolphins, and I had 6 Hall of Famers in the training camp, I was seldom dominant, because you reach that level that I know you can relate to, the speed, the size, and just the athletic ability is at another level when you get into the NFL.
Well, it's the best, and I think only 1% of all NFL players, or all players just in general, make it to that level. And that's where you meet the best, and you can say that you actually were able to compete and play at that level, just like and there's various levels. And the really cool thing, as we all get older, is nobody really judges you anymore on this guy was an all-pro and this guy's not. If you're in the club, you're in the club, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, it really is. Never was that brought to the forefront. We had Harold Carmichael, one of my teammates, big wide receiver, 6'8" at the time. And I really thought he was setting the benchmark for future wide receivers, but you still don't see him that size. They're all playing forward in the NBA. I think there's more money there. But anyway, we all went to Canton. I'd say 25 former, Eagles of some sort that played with Harold, including Coach Vermeil. Dick Vermeil went out. And, Mark, something you would never say back in your day or my day at 25 years old to another teammate is, even if you were leaving for the whole off season, hey, man, see you later. I love you. You never said that. But, boy, you get together today, to your point right on, nobody even remembers maybe how much the team won or lost, but you were part of that team. And as part of that team, you were part of the NFL. And it is a special brotherhood. And you know that as well as I do.
Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of jump to your story, because this show, again, is called Finding Your Summit, about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. And there's never been somebody that is more aligned with the theme of this show and what you went through. And so we're talking about how amazing it was for both of us to play in the NFL. And here you're living your life's dream. And then you go in for a doctor checkup or something, and you discover that you've got some kind of tumor, which had this profound effect on the rest of your life, your playing career, everything else. Why don't you let us know, or tell us how that all played out, how you found out about this tumor, and then what ensued after that?
Yeah, I was 27 years old when I was out of the NFL, 26, 27. I'm not sure exactly which. And what had happened was I had this, I'd be weightlifting, and I know you do a lot of weightlifting, but back in the 70s, there weren't a whole lot of guys on the team that weightlifted, but I had to do that in order to be strong enough to play. I wasn't really big weight-wise. I was 6'2", 220 pounds as a linebacker. I would never make it today. But anyway, that being said, I was weightlifting one day and I saw this little bubble pump up every time I did curls. I didn't think too much of it, pulled muscle, that sort of thing. And my father talked about it a little bit when we were down on the beach that summer. You ought to get that thing checked. And I went in to get it checked, and they said, oh, man, for a minute there, we thought you had cancer, but it did not come back as a cancerous cell. And they said, what you have is a fatty tumor. It's probably 99% benign. We'll go in and get it. Well, I saw 9 doctors, Mark, and I was operated on 3 times. And every time they went in, they got it. It came back bigger and faster. So finally, because people were scratching their head, a lot of the doctors, like, what is this really? They sent me up to Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York City, where I met one of the best orthopedic surgeons in the world. His name was Dr. Ralph Markov. And after waiting 2.5 hours in his office, and I'd given up my seat trying to be the gentleman, that they teach us at Salesianum, my high school, I was a little upset that I did, because I couldn't imagine waiting 2.5 hours. I wanted to see this doctor, have him get this tumor out once and for all. And I had already attracted some people who wanted me to come to training camp. And one was the Baltimore Colts at the time, or the Baltimore Ravens, I guess. And that's all I wanted to do. Now, that's my mindset while I'm sitting in the doctor's office. He finally sees me. He comes in. He's 5'7". You can tell that he's a man of big stature from the standpoint of being a doctor. Everybody bows before him because he's so good. He comes in, shakes my hand, introduces himself, looks at my x-rays, looks at the report, and he looks at me and he said, this is not the right diagnosis. They said you have nodular fasciitis. He said, from seeing you right now, take your shirt off. And I took my shirt off, and he says, if it's what I think it is, you're in big trouble. and he takes his thumb, he puts it into the tumor, takes me down to one of my knees. And he said, okay. I said, Doc, what the heck is that? He said, you have a desmoid tumor. I'd never heard of it. Well, only 2 in a million people get it back then and still today. And he said, here's what we're going to do. I don't know how big that thing is because you're masking it by all your weightlifting and your muscles. MRIs weren't available yet. So I took a CAT scan, and he came right back to me before I left that office that day. And he said, I'm going to be lucky if I can save your arm, but you will never play another down of football because of it. And I said, why? He said, this is trauma related. If I took it out and got it all, it would probably come back if you hit somebody again on a tackle. My knees buckled. I just went from get this out so I can get back and get 2 more years in towards my pension that I could cash at Wawa, by the way, or any convenience store, because you and I don't get paid anything. That's another story for another day. And I left there, and I immediately went to a bar to have a drink because I had to settle myself. What did this guy just say? I could lose my arm. Well, he did one major operation where he tried to save my arm, but it limited the arm to about 50% because he had to take out my shoulder blade, which this demon desmoid tumor had attached itself to. And it came back. And when it came back, I was in so much pain that I went in and we did the 4-quarter operation. I'm missing my left arm, my left shoulder, and 4 ribs. This is a prosthetic device. It's made of Kevlar. And I can tell you, if I'm in any fights in Philly, I'm leading with this shoulder. But to make a long story short, here I was at 29 years old with three kids, 2, 1, and infant. And I've just woken up in my hospital room after 3 days in the ICU. And life was really looking dim to me at that time.
I just can't even imagine. And the reason why I'm saying that, probably more so than most people that you go on and you do these interviews, these types of podcasts, is because I'm relating to you first and foremost as a former NFL player, right? And you're out there tackling guys. I was catching balls. And so either however you slice it, you need to be at your best when you're that part of that 1%. You need to be the best of the best of all the pack, and you need to have everything working together: your feet, your knees, your legs, your toes, your shoulders, your head. And to take any one of those pieces, away, like in a major chunk, the way you just described it, essentially your whole kind of left side there. I mean, I can't imagine and then you take football out of it. Now you're just talking about life. You're just talking about tying your shoe. You're talking about buttoning up your shirt, just the basic things of life. So when they went in and he did this incredible amount of surgery, really resculpting and reshaping your body, and putting this Kevlar and all this stuff, on, you wake up, and I mean, how long did it take for you to kind of accept it? And I can only imagine the depression, or I don't even know what words are in there that like this, there's a sense of serious loss here.
Well, I can relate it to you. When you climbed Mount Everest, think of that 24-hour emotional gambit you went through, from trying, to reach the top, the exhilaration of getting there. It was that kind of day for me. I woke up and I have most of the tubes out of me, and I'm starting to think about my future. Yeah. And first of all, I can't wait for the doctor to come in to tell me how well he's done or whatever's going on. I've been in ICU for 3 days, basically coming to for just enough time to eat and go back to sleep. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, I wonder if I'll have to go on permanent disability. I wonder if I'll ever have a job. I wonder if he got all of the tumor. I'm wondering this, I'm wondering that. The other thing was I was having tremendous pain still there because of a thing called phantom sensation, which is another story for another time, but you can actually feel like the limb is there. On top of that, I keep looking over at my pictures of my 2-year-old, my 1-year-old, and infant, and I'm starting to tear up. How am I going to make a living from them? What am I going to do if I'm not around, if this thing does come back? And where are they going to go if it does? And so into the room walks the doc. I can't wait to see him. And he says, listen, the operation went fairly well. I mean, fairly didn't sit well with me. And then he said, and I'm pretty sure I got it all. And I went, Doc, what do you mean you think you got it all? And, the anxiety in my voice was palpable. And also my heart is racing now. What do you think? You got it all? And I'm kind of blitzing it. Where are you to go next? What if it comes back? What's it strangle off? And he goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. He said, when I think I got it all, the best orthopedic surgeon in this hospital, I think I got it all. And from then he says, and listen, you ought to be happy about some things, because you had 11 guys, and this is the brotherhood again, 11 guys from your high school team, 5 from your college team, and 3 guys that were in town from the Eagles all come up and give you blood because we put out an SOS that you were going to bleed out on the 11.5-hour operation. Well, that did make me feel better that, those guys came forward. Now there's a couple guys there, Mark, I wished I didn't have their blood, but I wasn't going to be picky at that point. Very shortly after, the nurse comes in to me and she can see that I'm in a bad state. And I said to her, she said, "You okay?" I said, "No." I said, no visitors today, no phone calls. I haven't hit the bottom yet. I have to ground out before I can start back up. She says, "What are you going to do? Have a pity party?" I said, "Yeah, maybe I am." About an hour into my pity party, a guy appears at my doorway. I don't recognize him. I thought he was at the wrong room. He's an elderly gentleman, but he had on the credentials that you need and a schmuck. He looked like, but I hadn't seen him. And I said, Are you coming to see Kevin Reilly? He said, "Yes, I am." And as he stepped into the room, I could see that we had something in common. He was missing his left arm. He was a World War II veteran, and he'd lost his arm about 35 years prior. And he was in there as a counselor, a volunteer, to tell me all the things I would now face missing my left arm. And he brought me this little knife that's called an Alaskan knife that you can rock back and forth. And he told me how I could use that and to make sure I took it to dinner when I went out, so I didn't look foolish having somebody else cut up my meat. And he gave me a couple other things like that. And at the very end, he said to me, "By the way, are you hoping to go back to work?" And I said, "Oh, geez, I'm thinking about it. I hope they don't, keep me in the back room. I'm, working for the Xerox Corporation. I love to be out on the road. I'm managing people. I love my job." And he said, "Well, let's pretend you're going back." And he said, "What do you have to wear to work?" And I said, "Well, I got to wear a suit and tie." And I said, "Oh, I got to wear dress shoes like those tie shoes you have on." And he said, "Oh, no, like these." I said, "I got wingtip black tie shoes just like you do in my closet." He said, "Not like these, you don't." And with that, he said, "Lift your little finger down here," which I did. And when I did, he said, "Pull up." It was a flap. It was the Velcro flap. And he said, "Oh my goodness, these are pre-tie shoes." I said, he said, "Yes. And if you're thinking of wearing tie shoes, you're going to have to get these pre-tied." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "You'll never be able to tie your shoes again. It can't be done one-handed." And then he asked me to pull on his tie. And when I did, I thought it was good. It was one of those clip-on ties, that you wear. And I had worn them to 2nd and 3rd grade when I was in Catholic school, when my mother didn't have time. I was oldest of 6 kids. And Mark, I never slept alone until I was married. But that's another story for another day. But he said, "Use my name when you go down and get the clip-on ties, and they'll give you a 20% discount." And I said, "Why would I have to get a clip-on tie?" He said, "You'll never be able to tie your tie again. It can't be done one-handed. I've been trying for 35 years. Wow. So here comes the nurse back in, and she said, "You look worse than when I left you." I said, "I am." She said, "Well, I want you to answer that phone." I said, "I didn't even hear it ringing. My mind is so gone. I didn't even hear the phone ringing." I said, "I don't want to talk to anybody. I told you that." She said, "You want to talk to this guy." A lot of your audience won't recognize this name, but it was a guy by the name of Rocky Blyer.
He's been on this podcast.
Okay. We were friends. We weren't great friends, but we visited each other's locker room when we played in the exhibition seasons. He went to Notre Dame. I knew guys that went there. I went to Villanova. He knew guys that went there. So we were friends. Dick LeBeau, their defensive coordinator, who was my special teams coach at the Eagles, told him about me, and here he was on the phone. I won't go through the conversation, but he says to me at the very end, "Have anybody told you about your limitations?" I said, "Well, funny you should ask. There was a really well-meaning guy to come in here today." I said, "Rocky depressed the hell out of me. That's why I didn't even hear your phone ring." And I told him this story, and he listened like I thought he wasn't on the phone. And at the very end, I said, "So these are the things he told me I can't do." And I'm thinking about, holy mackerel, buttons and zippers and keyboards. Oh my, what else haven't I thought of? And Rocky said to me, "Hey, you must promise me something. You must promise me you won't quit on anything unless you try it yourself a dozen times." I said, "Rock, listen, I appreciate your enthusiasm, and I know you're a gritty guy. I said, but I think this guy's a little more of an expert than you or I. He didn't even hesitate, Mark. He says, let me tell you something about experts. Experts built the Titanic, and amateurs built the Ark. Experts can be wrong.
Yeah,
and if you know his background, he was never supposed to play another down of football, and he has Super Bowl rings. He sent me a poem that I use on a constant basis when I'm faced with things like tying my tie, and I keep him in mind. And you like climbing the mountains. If you have that positive attitude and you keep trying, you will surprise yourself. And I have surprised myself going forward. And who'd have thunk it was another NFL guy that came into my life when I needed him most.
Yeah. So to reset that just a little bit, first of all, as you were speaking and going through all this, the people on YouTube watching this saw you tie your tie, which is really amazing. So again, it's the power of positive thinking and what you can do if you put your mind to it. And you just showed us that you can do that when somebody told you that you couldn't overcome because he hadn't been able to do that. Like, who cares? You still did. Number one. Number two is Rocky Blyer, who was also on this podcast. This is a guy that played for the Steelers back in the 70s, as you mentioned. He had deployed to Vietnam. He had a bomb, essentially, or a grenade go off in his chest. He was severely wounded. I believe it was his feet that were affected the most.
Blew off his big toe and it wrecked his knee. His knee was his biggest rehab piece.
Yeah. So here's a guy that, battled back, and he had an amazing NFL career. And as you mentioned, won 4 Super Bowl rings with the Steelers, and has gone on to, great things, also speaking and writing books and things like that. And then for your life to have some guy that you can actually relate to, a former NFL player. You guys had known each other for years. And he's saying, don't let anybody give you the limitations that so many people want to put on you. I had numerous people tell me you'll never climb the 7 summits, or for sure, you're never going to make it up Everest because there's only so many people who have done that. And I'm like, well, why not me? I keep asking that question to other people, like, why not you? Why can't you be the one? Why can't you be the one and only one to pull that off? Right? It's just amazing what the human spirit can actually do for you if you don't give up and you figure out a way to get through certain things.
You're right on board. And I was going to mention, and you already said it, I found out through this experience and others, because once you get through something like this, you have a little more confidence that you can attack things. Have I failed at things? Yeah. You don't want to see me playing the guitar. It's not fun. It's not good. And I've tried strumming with my foot. No, it's not worth the effort. But I play golf. I run in 5Ks. I've run in 4 half marathons and a Marine Corps marathon. Something they told me not to do because you'll wreck your back up, Kev. You have 25 pounds on one side of your body. It's not on the other. Just stay to walking. But the human spirit, Mark, is stronger than anything that can happen to it. But you have to set goals. And I always tell people, set goals. If you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. And then you have to challenge yourself, to discipline yourself to get to that point where you win. And sometimes you don't get to the goal you set for yourself, but you'll end up a lot higher up the ladder than if you didn't have any goals at all. Nobody knows that better than you.
Let me ask you a personal question. So as you said, as you're going through this and they discover the tumors and now they're going to take, half your side out, it seems like you said you had 2 small, really infants, babies, at the time. What has your I don't know your marital status today, but at that time, what was, your significant other, your wife at the time, there for you in terms of, it wasn't just these buddies, these 11 football players that came in. It wasn't just Rocky. When you're sitting here talking about the day-to-day waking up, how did that all manage out? How did that all play out?
Well, being a little stubborn, I went back to work before I was told I could. Once I started doing some things, I can overcome this. And, God bless, one of the blessings I had, it wasn't my dominant arm. So getting in the driver's seat and driving was not a big problem. And during that time, one of the things, right before I went into the operating room, my doctor came down and he gave me a piece of paper he was supposed to give me the night before. And it was a release form. And he said, here, sign this for me. And we did have a great relationship. He had the bedside manner of that wall behind you, but he and I hit it off for some reason. And he said, you don't have to read it, just sign it. I was supposed to give it to you last night, but I got waylaid. And I know how people put a lot of pressure on his time. I said, I think I'll read it, Doc. There was 3 paragraphs on there, but I only remember one sentence, Mark. It said, as the adult in this operation, you fully understand and comprehend that there's a 30% chance you will not survive the event. Well, as Johnny Carson would say, I did not know that. Nobody had told me that I wouldn't survive the event. Now, he said, look, it's me again. That's a standard form, not to worry about it. But, I'm going into that room and I'm saying every prayer I can think of. And for 3 days, actually 2, I was in and out of, consciousness because of the drugs they gave me. And all I could see was a white ceiling. And between you and me, I didn't know where I was. I didn't know if I was in purgatory, heaven, or back on earth. But then I saw a clock on the 3rd day, and I was pretty sure I was back in this world. I don't know. I got divorced from my first wife, and she left me. So I don't know how that impacted. She'll never tell me. But it didn't impact my 3 kids. And I got 11 grandkids, and I'm proud of all of them. And my second wife now, Paula, has just been fantastic with all of this. Keeps me straight. It's a really great relationship. And, my kids don't remember me with an arm, so it was no big deal seeing their dad without an arm. But I've had some really funny experiences. About a year ago, I was asked by one of the grandkids if I would come in on Grandparents' Day and read a story. The teacher calls me the night before. I've got the story for you, Mr. Reilly. And Mr. Reilly, I know you've been dealing with Special Olympics on teaching kids in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade how differences are okay. It's okay to be different. And they had this whole program. She said, you think it would work on kindergarten kids? She said, we got a couple kids picking on each other, and I think they need to know that we're all in this together. I said, I'll try it. What do we got to lose? So Mark, I go in, I read the story, and I'm going through, it's okay to be different, giving a little spiel, a couple nuggets here and there. And I say, what do you notice about me that's different from all of you? What do you notice about Liam's grandfather that's different from all of you? And this little girl, Amy, she had a little name tag on, looked smart enough. She raises her hand. I said, yes, Amy. She said, you're old. And the teacher's laughing so hard. She went out into the hallway. I have nowhere to go with this. The next kid says, you're wearing glasses. I said, forget it. You guys thought, it's good. They didn't even notice I didn't have an arm. And the funniest thing is, I would say I'm in a grocery store or something, and a kid gets loose from his mother or father, and they just come up to you. They're so honest. They care. And they go, hey, mister, what happened to your arm? And I try to get down on, I squat down so I'm eye to eye with them. And I try to tell them they're concerned about it. I try to tell them that I had a really bad boo-boo and it's okay. The doctor fixed me up and I'm in great shape, all that stuff. And you had to talk their language. Well, in talking to boo-boo, I did this with one of my grandkids who was concerned, and I'm holding him and his eyes got real big when he saw my scars. He wanted to see underneath my prosthetic. And so when I showed him and I was saying, see all these boo-boos? They're all healed now. The doctor's good. And his eyes got this big as saucers. And I said, Andrew, what's the matter with you? He said, Papa, don't ask me to kiss that boo-boo. Well, see, there they are. It's in their frame of mind. But I have found out that 98% of the people that I meet are very empathetic towards my situation, offer to help on occasion when I don't even need it, but I thank them for it. Mark, it's made me look at people in a different manner. I think from my experience, there's a lot of people out there. There's more good people than bad. And I think they just don't have the opportunity to show it when you're normal. But if you need a little help, a little empathy, I can't tell you how many people reach out. And I think that's important.
I think if, from my standpoint, at least, if you were to send your resume over, and so somebody's never seen you, right? And I'm looking at you, you look normal, you got your suit and tie on, you look sharp. And if you sent that resume over, so say that we're having a telephone conversation, I'd never see you. I mean, you've got an impressive run. I mean, NFL football player, drafted, you've worked for Xerox for 30 years. You have run in these different races that you were talking about. You're a golfer. You also speak around the country. You're the radio broadcaster for Villanova on the football team. You were the voice for many years with the Eagles. I mean, it's a really impressive. So again, it's for everybody out there. It's not about the physical. It's about what's inside and what's going to drive you to those magical places. And we all need inspiration. And so if people like you or I or others can serve in that way, what a blessing. And you certainly have been a blessing in that way. I want to ask you, I love this title of a book. And I want to ask you about it just a little bit, that you wrote, called Tackling Life: How Faith, Family, and Fortitude Kept an NFL Linebacker in the Game. Tell me about that.
Right there.
I love that.
I lay it all out. Before I wrote it, I said, I'm going to be completely honest in this book. I don't want anybody to challenge me on any point of view. And I really haven't had any, but it's hard to lay yourself out. In there, I lay myself out about my divorce that crippled me mentally. 20 years of marriage, and you find out your wife has run away with another man. Whoa, that is humbling, and it humbled me to my core. And from that experience, I started to drink heavy. And I was by one of my daughters, who wrote me the nicest letter, telling me how much she loved me, but she said, "You're never going to babysit the kids overnight." I was a nighttime drinker, come home from work, and in the stressful world that I was in and trying to do it all with one arm, I'd pound down a couple beers every night. Then it got to be a couple wines, and I didn't know it, but I was out of control. And not when you get something from your daughter, and you got two of them, I know, you pay attention. These are people you love more than life itself. And that's when I turned around, went to AA, and I've been sober now for 8 years. And I'm not ashamed to say that. So the other aspect of that is every one of these sort of tragedies I touch in my book, but every one of them had a silver lining. This here has been the biggest blessing I've ever had. And I just have this saying, I'm very religious, and I have this saying that God has 3 answers to our prayers: yes, no, and not right now. And that means he's got a plan for you. And he had a plan for Kevin Reilly, and I'm on it right now. And I think he had a plan for you, and I think you're on it right now. And we just got to convince people out there that you've been given some talent. Find that talent and find out how you can use it to help other people. There was a cardinal in Chicago named Cardinal George, and he had a saying on his deathbed: the only thing we take with us when we die is what we give to others. And if you put that front and foremost, you're going to have a lot of friends, and you're going to be a happy individual.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Again, we share all these things in common. Another one, and how I really got into this whole climbing, is I was going through a divorce 10 years ago. And so through my struggles and challenges that were laid out in front of me, I had to have a big ass goal that was out there. And that's what the whole Seven Summit thing became about. And I don't think there's any one way, and people don't have to go climb mountains necessarily, but you have to climb your own mountain, right? And it's so metaphorical in that, you go through peaks and you go through valleys, and I've had some serious valleys and I've had some serious peaks, right? And like you said, there is a plan. And the thing I like most about what you said is about the silver lining. And like doing this podcast, for example, I couldn't have done this 10 years ago because I wasn't ready, with my own life experiences. Many of the other things at the time when I've just been battling and never thought these things were going to come around. And then finally one day I popped through, have been the blessing that I look at it, years back. It's always hindsight's 2020. It was like, I needed to go through that at that time to be able to put myself in a position to succeed at something I'm trying to do now. Right. So that's really incredible. I say this with all sincerity too, is that I so appreciate how authentic you are, the way you're describing like what you've been through in that book. And I think there's just nothing that, and this is something I didn't find out till I was 50 years old, is really how to be vulnerable, right? And this is something that you have obviously in Tackling Life, this book that you wrote, you've laid it all out there. And look, you're a strong dude. And this is what I had to figure out. When I walk into a room, I know that when you walk into the room, you have a presence about yourself. And so it doesn't make you any less of a man. It actually makes you more powerful and more attractive in being able to share those different stories, because everybody goes through some kind of bump in their life.
No doubt about it. You know, we might be brothers from another mother, because after my divorce, I dedicated myself to training for a marathon, which I never thought I would complete, especially after you do a half marathon and you can hardly breathe. You'd say, how would you go another 100 feet, yet another, 13 miles? And it's interesting how you and I as athletes had to find something physical as a goal, to bring us out of those doldrums. Yeah, it's really remarkable. And that's the other thing I try to tell people. You got to have perspective. And I was woken up one day, it's amazing how much we learn after 50. Wait till you get over 60 like me. The next 10 years are even better. You start to go, God, if I only knew that when. But here I was a peer visitor down at Walter Reed for about 6 years. And because I couldn't go back and forth as often as they needed me, because I was 100 miles away, they put me in charge, not in charge, but they used my talents to guys who are coming out of Walter Reed as amputees to interview them and give them access to how to do a resume, and to set them up with some interviews, and just to tell them, maybe walk them through what they should say and shouldn't say in an interview. Here they were in this hospital for a while. And so I was doing this, and it was very fulfilling. And I finally met my first triple amputee. And he was a Marine captain who was missing both legs below the knee, his left arm, and his left eye. And he had gotten blown up in a Jeep. And he was decked out, Mark, looked sharp as can be in his uniform, came in with his hat on, just a presence, in spite of everything else. We weren't into the conversation 5 minutes, and he said, can I ask you a personal question? And I said, sure. He said, when you lost your arm, did you lose your non-dominant arm or your dominant arm? And I didn't know which one was his dominant or non-dominant. I said, well, fortunately for me, lucky for me, I lost my non-dominant arm. And he smiled and he said, so did I. Aren't we lucky? And I went, holy mackerel, I can't even hold, the beer that you drink, yet alone you're a triple amputee and you're blind in an eye, and you're putting me on the same pedestal as you. I'm nowhere near that. And I thought to myself, boy, what's that old saying? The one-eyed guy in the land of the blind is the king, or something like that. Understand the things when you get down that you have that nobody else has. We're not in a third world country. Most of the people have a roof over their head and eat at least 2 square meals a day. And I try to tell people in this day and age, because one of the problems we're running into, Mark, is there's too much to worry about. You have this internet thing, and there's some things that go on with trying to keep track with your Facebook, your Twitter. And the next thing you know, you're losing sight of what's important. One of my mentors told me, you should have 4 things in your life that you're all in for. And that is your faith, your family, your friends, and whatever it is you do to try to make the world better. Make sure you make those the priority in life, because the rest of the stuff doesn't matter. And I believe that.
Great insights. You do a lot of motivational speaking around the country. You've got a great message. People need to hear you. Where can people find you?
Well, they can go to my website, which is www.kreilly.com. And they can also look up Molly Plotkin. She is my publicist and my agent, and she will connect you also. And if they're looking to get this book, it's on Amazon. If they have a special problem, go on my website, get my PO address, and I will send the note to anybody that that could use this right now. And I will personalize the book for you. So that is my gift to anybody out there who's going through a tough time.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. There he is. Appreciate you so much for coming on. Really, 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 truly love this story. I do a lot of these. I've done over 225 inspiring stories, and this one I would say ranks just as high as, the best ones I've done out there. So I appreciate that. It inspires me. It also tells me I'm on the right track by listening to people like you and tell your stories. So, it's a gift that you came on today, and that's your gift to me for Thanksgiving. So thank you for delivering that. So there he is, the one, the only Kevin Reilly. Thank you so much.
Mark, thanks for having me. And